You likely clicked on this video because right now you're currently in a period of low motivation and low discipline, and you've had enough. You're sick and tired of being consistent for 2 weeks or even 2 months and then falling off. And then it's just like this loop of 2 weeks consistent, 2 weeks not, 2 weeks consistent, 2 weeks not. And you feel like although you'll make 2 weeks of progress, you're going back to square one, and you really feel like you've plateaued. You're stagnating and you can't go past a certain point. Now, in the next 30 minutes, I'm going to teach you very simply how to not only get out of a rut, but how to avoid them and prevent them in the first place, which is arguably more important. Hi, if you're new to the channel, my name is Christian. I've been helping young dudes overcome their bad habits for the past 3 or so years now. Before that, I was able to conquer my own bad habits, such as now being over 1,000 days porn-free. And I make these videos because I enjoy it. So very simply, what causes a rut? That's where we'll start. What causes a rut? Now, ruts are caused by complacency, complacency is basically just a lack of action. You stopped taking action, or you're no longer taking action for whatever reason that might be. We don't know that right now, but we'll talk about how to figure out why that reason was later on and then what you can do about it. But first of all, a rut is caused by inaction, and which is caused by complacency. So basically, you were doing something that was working, and then for whatever reason, you decided to stop doing that thing. Maybe you're doing a bunch of habits that got you into momentum. You're feeling good when you're doing them. And then for whatever reason, you decided, I don't need to do these anymore. And then what happened? You started going backwards. You fell into a rut. So the easiest way to prevent a rut, or the principle or the thing to keep in mind, you can write this down, is don't stop doing the things that are working. Don't stop doing the things that are working. Do not stop doing the things that are working. Because let's say, for example, right now, the thing that is working for you is going to the gym 3 times a week. You know that if you go to the gym 3 times a week, you feel great. You feel awesome. You feel energized. You feel like the man, and you show up. If you go to the gym, you know that's like a flow-on effect. Or you also know that if you look after your sleep, you go to bed on time, you have the energy to go to the gym, which then flows on to every other area of your life. Now, here's the thing. If you know that's true, then there will never be a point in your life where you can stop taking your sleep seriously. That will always be the case, because don't stop doing the things that are working. If you know that looking after your sleep is what leads to everything, then of course, when you start becoming a little bit complacent on your sleep, where you stay up an extra hour later and start sleeping in an extra hour later, then eventually, yes, you will fall into a rut. So whatever the thing that is working, which could be asleep, it might not, whatever it is for you, whatever it is that is working, don't stop doing that. It's so simple. But most of us, because as guys, we just like to think, because we're very logical. Oftentimes, it leads to us just overcomplicating everything. But overcoming a rut and beating a rut is super simple. Just don't stop doing the things that are working. And then if you're currently in a rut, just think, okay, am I still doing the things I was doing when I wasn't in a rut? The answer is probably no. So then what do you have to do? Start doing those things again. Start doing those things again. So don't stop doing the things that got you into momentum, because there's likely a few things right now. You've probably been in a rut before and you know how you got out of it. You know what you did to get out of it. But here's what happens. Think about this. So when you're in a rut, go down here. And then to get out of a rut, you get yourself into momentum. And you probably did a few things that got you into momentum and up here. Why do you think that you can just stop doing these things that got you into momentum, or you stop doing those things that got you up here? Why do you think you can do that? You can't. Because here's the thing. There's always a lag between our actions and the results that happen as a result of our actions. And these are known as what we could call a momentum cycle. So I'll use 2 different colors here. So I'll use black and green. So let's say you do an action today that causes you to go up, and we'll just say 2 weeks just for easy maths. But let's say the results of those actions that you took 2 weeks ago. So let's say this is a timeline of looks like this. Timeline of 2 weeks. Each of these marks down the bottom is 2 weeks. And let's say you did an action for 2 weeks. So let's say you went to the gym for 2 weeks. Now the results or the gains from the gym won't show up. Let's just say, for example, this is just an example, 2 weeks later. But here's what happens. But here's what most of us do, and this is usually the reason why we fall into a rut, is we stop doing the things that are working. We were going to the gym for 2 weeks. We went to the gym for 2 weeks, but we didn't see any results or we didn't see any progress. So what do? We stopped doing the thing that was just going to show up 2 months later or 2 weeks later in this example. So then what happens? Our momentum dips. But then when our momentum dips because we've stopped doing the things that are working, what happens is we get confused because it's like, whoa, why am I making gains? I'm not doing anything right. And then you're like, oh, maybe I should start going to the gym again. So then you start going to the gym again. But then what happens? You still have these 2 weeks to catch up. So your momentum goes down and then you get unmotivated because you're not getting the results. And the reason for this is because there's a lag between action and results. Now that could be 2 weeks, could be 2 months. It depends on what the thing is, but there's always an action or there's always a lag between action and results. And one of the key beliefs we need to adopt in order to, or that I would recommend anyone adopt in order to stay in momentum, is to detach yourself or detach your happiness from the results and detach your happiness from achieving the goal or the goal happening in a certain amount of time. And what we should focus on instead is we should focus on what is known as the progress, or focus on the small actions. So focus on the small actions down here that lead to you being up here, and just focus on doing these. Whether you are down here or up here, you just commit to doing these. So 100% you can dream of, or not necessarily dream of, but remind yourself and be focused on the goal. But whilst you're focusing on the goal, you should obsess over, like 10 times as much, obsess over the small habits or the small actions, or what we could call the process that leads to the goal. So focus on the goal, but obsess over the process or the small actions that will take you there. And this reminds me of a quote. I don't know whose quote it is, but I heard it from Chris Williamson on Instagram on his podcast, Modern Wisdom. He just has clips of them. If you haven't watched it, he has some really good guests on there. But I heard this quote from him, and I don't know who he was quoting, but I believe he was quoting someone. But I have this quote written down, and I'll quickly glance at my notes to read it. But he basically says that successful people do boring things better and for longer than anyone else is willing to do them for. Successful people do the boring things better and for longer than anyone else is willing to do them for. So the reason why lots of us fall into ruts is because we take the small actions, the small boring actions, for granted. And we think that achieving a certain goal, again, we overcomplicate it. We think that is it really just doing this one boring, seemingly insignificant task for 3 years that's going to get me to my goal? No, it has to be more complicated than that. But sometimes we just have to realize that, yes, it is that simple. Because, as I said, you will never get to a point where your sleep is, for example, your sleep or just going to the gym will no longer be important in you achieving whatever your goal is. It will always be important because that is the small, insignificant action that if you stay consistent with, if you keep showing up, and if you stay in momentum with it, you will get to the goal. But for whatever reason, we realize, oh, well, I've been consistent with this thing for 4 months. Maybe I should stop doing this and find something better. But then what happens? You go into this momentum dip. Your cycle dips. So this is called a momentum cycle, where you go up, you go down, you go up, you go down, like a wave. But the goal is to do the small actions that get you into the top of the momentum. And then when you're at the top of momentum, to keep doing those actions so that you keep going up and up and up and up. Don't stop doing the things that are working. So this word here, consistency is crucial in achieving any goal that you have. Consistency just basically means, are you still going? have you not given up? Because the truth is, these ruts, these dips in momentum, they're inevitable. You will always have dips in momentum. You will always have dips in momentum. You will always have ruts. But the person who is consistent is, after they rut, they keep going. They find a way to get out of the rut, and they keep going. Because yes, consistency is, you did a habit on Monday and on Tuesday, on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and you did that for like 3 years in a row or whatever. That's what consistency is. But what consistency also is okay, maybe after 3 months you do miss a day, or you miss 2 days. But on day 3 or even day 13, did you recommit? And at the moment, you are consistency, because simply by watching this video, you are proving to yourself and also to me that you are willing to recommit. You are not giving up. Because here's what happens. So let's say you're aiming for a streak, or you just want to do things days in a row, and you fail on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You fail on day 7. What happens if you don't try again? What happens if you don't try again? You stay in failure. You stay as a failure. And the only option, or the only way in which you can become a winner, is if you try again, is if you get up again. Which, yes, okay, even if you try, you're going to be faced with the possibility of failing again. But here's the thing, even when you do fail, you just go again, because then you give yourself the opportunity to be a winner. Because if you don't go again, if you give up, you stay as a failure. So right now, if you're in a rut, you will only stay as a failure if you don't try to get yourself out of it. And you're not that person. You're not the person who just stays as a failure. You're the person, because you're watching this video, who doesn't want to stay as a failure. So understand that failure and ruts are inevitable. They will always happen. And as you become more experienced, they become further and further apart from each other and further between. But they will still occur. And the important thing isn't whether you don't fail, because failure at a certain point is inevitable. You will make mistakes. But the important thing is, what do you do after you fail? Do you get up again? Do you keep going? Do you not give up because you decided, I'm going to be consistent? Did you stay in the game? Just keep playing. Just keep playing. That's the moral of the story in this point I was making here. Just keep playing. Because you will always have these periods of momentum and these periods of dips. Now, as I said, the important thing is, first of all, okay, ruts are going to happen, but how do we prevent them? And as I said, you want to stop doing the things that are working. Now, a way to understand what you're doing and also what you started to do that led you into a rut is to start studying yourself. See yourself as a student, or even see yourself as someone you're experimenting on. So you can even see them. So you can even see yourself as like there's two versions of you. There's the scientist who's studying you, and then there's you. So you want to study yourself, because when you study yourself and you become curious about yourself and as to why you do things and why you fall into why you fall into dips in momentum, is when you become curious about yourself and you start studying yourself, then what happens is you begin to learn the lessons, or you begin to learn the reasons as to why you fell into a rut. You begin to become aware of, what was the thing I stopped doing, or what's the thing I stopped doing first? Because you likely stopped doing everything eventually, but there was likely one thing that you stopped doing first that you thought was seemingly insignificant and seemingly unimportant. But if you become curious and you start studying yourself, you actually realize how important that one thing is that you seemingly keep stopping. Maybe it is just going to bed on time, or a simple one is like charging your phone not next to your bed, because if you charge your phone next to your bed, then you're going to wake up with it. It's the first thing you're going to touch in the morning, and then you're just going to be on it for 3 hours. But something as small as charging it not next to your bed, like over here or outside your room, such a small thing, but that could literally be the thing that keeps you out of the rut, and the thing that you have to stop doing, even after the thing that you don't stop doing, even after 2 years of being consistent. After 2 years, you don't place it back next to your bed. If you know it worked, don't stop doing the things that are working. So study yourself. A great way to study yourself is to track your habits and to develop what is known as a habit tracker. And it's also to journal. So And another good way is to journal as well. So a habit tracker. So let's say there's a bunch of habits that you want to do or that you're trying to do. So a habit tracker might look like this. Like it just looks like this, really. And you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then you might have, I don't know, gym, you might have meditate, you might have cold shower, you might have, and then you might have, I don't know, do work or something, like 2 hours of work, very simply. And you might realize that you're in a rut. You might realize you're in momentum and you did this, but then your day looked like that. And then the next day looked like that. And then the next day looked like this. And then the next 2 weeks looked like that or whatever. And then you realize, okay, what was the thing that I stopped doing? It was the gym. And then you might, let's say you've been tracking your habits for a year or even a few months, you might realize that, every time I even just stopped looking at my habit tracker, the thing that was not ticked first, or the thing that I didn't do first was the gym, or it was having a cold shower, or it was whatever it might have been. Maybe it was praying if you're a Christian like myself, or whatever it is. Maybe whatever it is, you can start becoming aware of and identifying essentially your weak point, and essentially the thing that you become complacent in first. So then if you know that, then you can maybe write down that don't stop going to the gym even when I feel like I've been very consistent with the gym. And then that just becomes a rule that you live your life by, or what we could call a principle. Become aware of. And this is why we have to worry. And this is why we have to stop worrying so much about failure and going into ruts. And we need to stop being afraid of the rut, because every rut we have has a reason why we fell into the rut in the first place. And then when we discover that reason, or what you could call the lesson, then you have one nugget of wisdom. So a lesson leads to wisdom on how to not fall into a rut next time. So the important thing is, when you fall into a rut, obviously we want to prevent the rut in the first place by don't stop doing the things that are working. But when you do fall into a rut, okay, study yourself and understand, okay, what led me into going into a rut? Did I go somewhere that I thought that now that I've been consistent, maybe you went to a bar with a friend or something and you've been trying to stay sober, and then by going to the bar, you had one drink and then that led to 10 drinks, and then you've been in a rut for 2 weeks because that's led you down to do other bad habits, or just be lazy or undisciplined because you had one undisciplined moment. And then you discover that, and then you realize, I can't be trusted in that environment at the moment or ever, or whatever it is. So step one is prevent the rut, first of all, by stop doing the things that are working. And then when you inevitably go into a rut, grab the lesson, which is another nugget of wisdom on how to prevent a rut in the first place. So it's really that simple. And as I said, a great way to discover how you fell into a rut is to study yourself, track your habits, and also a good habit is to journal. And when I say journal doesn't mean diary. So when you think of journal, you probably think of these girls who write, today, this is what happened, and I met up with my crush and I had the best day ever and all of this. That's not what a journal is. What a journal is a journal is basically where you ask yourself a series of reflective questions, such as, was I being the person I see myself as? Was I living up to my values today? Was I embodying my values today? Was I doing, if I repeated today, like this is a good one, if I repeated today 1,000 days in a row, would I be closer to or further away from my goals? And all these things. Because then that can also help you, and the only reason for that is this can also help you develop awareness as to, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, all these things, which can also just be pivot points in learning what led to the rut in the first place. So first of all, it's more like tracking your actions and then tracking your mind. That's a good way to put it. Because through studying yourself, you learn where you failed, how you failed, which then teaches you how to mitigate the next failure and make those momentum cycles longer and longer and longer. And then over time, as I said, those momentum cycles become further and further between each other, and they actually become shorter. So at the moment, you likely have maybe 2 weeks of momentum, and then maybe you're in a rut for 2 weeks, or maybe you're in a rut for even longer, maybe a month. the more you track yourself, track your progress, and focusing on turning the lessons into wisdom and preventing the ruts, the more you just keep improving and studying yourself, then not only do those ruts happen further away from each other, so maybe you only fall into a rut every 2 months, and it's every 4 months, and it's every year, for example, then when you are in a rut, those ruts even become smaller. So when that rut was 1 month, now it goes to 3 months and 2 months, then maybe you're only in a rut for a day. And that day is only once every year. Because as I said, these ruts here, or these periods of dips in momentum, or these periods of failure, they are inevitable. So we need to stop fearing them, and we need to stop seeing them as scary. And we need to just see them as, okay, I'm in a rut. That sucks. But first of all, how did I get here? What did I stop doing? And what did I also start doing that led me here? So that I know that, okay, what do I start doing now to get me out of a rut? And then what do I keep doing to keep me in momentum? Simple. So it's very simple. So start reflecting on that at the moment. And even myself, I was in a rut not long ago, about a month ago or a few weeks ago, I was in a rut. And I realized that, and that was the first time I'd been in basically a dip in momentum, probably for this year, first time this year. Maybe I have been in one this year, but I don't remember. Maybe at the start of the year or the end of last year, but this was the first rut I've been in a long time. I realized that it was caused by, I had an injury on my foot that I needed to get surgery on, and that just led me not really being able to exercise and not being able to go for walks, go to the gym, and all these things. And then that just didn't make me feel good, yes, discipline exists and you can do things even when you don't feel like it, which is something I know. But for whatever reason, it became an excuse to be lazy. But now I know that even if I can't exercise, because for me, I realized that, okay, exercise or going to the gym or making sure I'm staying active is crucial for me staying in a rut. So far it's Tuesday. Yesterday, I didn't go to the gym because I did end up running out of time. But what I'm going to do today is as soon as I finish finishing this video, or as soon as I finish recording this video, because I recorded a video before this as well, I'm going to the gym. I'm not skipping 2 days in a row of the gym because I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. If I skip one day, I still have 5 days left in the week to go to the gym, because let's say yesterday, Monday was very busy, then I still have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to get 4 days, to fit in 4 days. But once you start skipping 2 days or even 3 days, then I know I'm going to start losing momentum. So to me, it's a non-negotiable. No matter what happens, even if it started pouring down, I'm going to the gym because I work out outside, I work out at home. Even if it starts pouring down, I'm getting a workout in. I'm doing something, because I realized that the thing that led me into losing momentum was because I couldn't exercise. I wasn't allowed to exercise because I had surgery on my foot and I could barely walk. So another learning lesson for me from that is, if I was to be in that state again where I can't exercise, then what I would do is I'd still find a way to be outside. I'd still go outside. I'd still sit outside, find a way to be outside, to be in nature, because for me, nature is something that makes me feel good. It makes me feel calm. It takes my mind off things. For me, being in nature, it's like being in the presence of God. So that's very beneficial for me. So for me, because I went into a little bit of a rut, I'm now aware of what led me into the rut, which now means I can't make that excuse anymore because I've learned the lesson, which means I've become one piece wiser in terms of how to avoid a rut. And as I said, I hadn't had a rut for, I don't remember the last time I had a rut. I might have had one earlier this year. Let's just say I did, just for the sake of this video. So what's that? Now it's November. Let's say it's been 11 months since I had a rut. I only got to 11 months of momentum, because every time I had a rut before, where it would be 2 months on, 2 months off, I was able to learn and grab the lesson. Now, to finish off this video, let's talk about, right now you're currently in a rut, and how do you actually start getting that momentum back? Because obviously you start doing the things that were working, but how do you actually do that? Because what most of us do is we get this sudden jolt of motivation because we've been in a rut for 2 weeks and we're pissed off. We have what's known as what you could call a fuck this event, where I forgot what book it's mentioned in. It's not the 4-hour work week. Maybe it's Deep Work. I think it's one of Tim Ferriss's books. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And it's basically where you tell yourself, no more being a loser. I've had enough of being a loser. Maybe something happened and you're like, okay, time to be on again. Time to be on again, time to lock in. And another reason why that momentum only lasts for like 2 weeks, and the reason why we end up falling back into a rut, or we can't sustain that momentum, is because we add everything back in straight away, and we try to go from 0 to 100 straight away, or on day one, where it is actually better that maybe for the first few days, you add in this habit, and then the next few days after that, you add in that one, and you slowly build your progress back up. And you might think that that's being a bit of a pussy, and that's taking things slowly, and it's a bit more passive. When we go 0 to 100, the opposite of that is starting small. And as I said, yes, you might think that, okay, you're being a bit of a pussy, and you know that you can handle more because you've handled more in the past, and you might see it as an excuse to be a little bit lazy. But you do want to start small, because think about it like the gym. If for whatever reason you don't go to the gym for 2 weeks, or even 3 weeks, or even 1 week, but let's say it's a month, you don't go to the gym for the month. And this was me, I didn't go to the gym for the month. And let's say when you were consistently going to the gym, you could bench easily 60 kilograms. Let's just say you could bench 60 kilograms. What would happen if you didn't go to the gym for a month? Could you, as on that first session back, could you bench 60 kilograms? Probably not. That 60 kilograms would humble you. So what would you have to do? You'd probably drop the weight down to 40 or 50 and slowly, starting small, work your way back up to it. You'd work your way back up to it. And maybe after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which is me right now, like I hadn't been to the gym in a little while, and for the past 3 weeks, I've been going back to the gym because now I'm back in momentum after my rut. And right now, after 3 weeks, I'm almost back at where I was. I think I am. This week I felt really good. I started feeling strong again, but that's because I didn't try lifting the weight I was up to. I started off a bit small, a bit lower, which felt just as hard. But okay, I started small, and then you basically progressively overload until you're back to where you were. And do the same thing with your habits and with all these other things you're doing. Maybe beforehand, you were being really disciplined, and you were doing like 8 hours of work per day, and you had a really good 30-minute morning routine and evening routine, and you're being very strict to your sleep, which is where you want to get to. But you want to start small and progressively overload your way up to that. So maybe you start with 2 hours of work per day. And instead of waking up on time, you just start, okay, I'm just going to go to bed on time. And then once you're consistent with that for a few days, and maybe that starts feeling a bit easy, you're like, okay, that's easy. You increase it a little bit, and then you keep increasing it until you're back to where you were, which might only take 2 or 3 weeks. And then when you're at that 3rd week, you don't stop doing the things that are working. You do not stop doing the things that are working. Because for me, I've run 2 half marathons, and when I was training for my first half marathon, I became very fit, because you have to become fit to run a half marathon. And then the time between my first half marathon and my second half marathon was around 6 months before. It was around 6 months, which means I hadn't really trained or ran in 6 months. So when I started training for my second half marathon, 6 months before that, so you could say like 6 months ago, I could run 21 kilometers. But when I started training again, because I hadn't run in 6 months, I could hardly even run 5 because I hadn't run in like 6 months. So what did I have to do? I had to start running 5 kilometers, then 6, and then slowly progressively overloading it until I could run 21 kilometers. It's the same thing for your habits, and it's the same thing for any rut you do, whether it's a rut that's habit related or whatever it is. You need to start small. You need to start small. You need to progressively overload yourself, because if you don't, you will overwhelm yourself. Because think about the gym. If you try to lift that 60 kilograms or even 100 kilograms on the first session back without just dropping it back to maybe 80 or 70 or whatever, you will injure yourself. Or even if you don't injure yourself, you will overwhelm yourself. Because yes, you will be able to handle it, but maybe not on day one. Maybe it will just take you 3 weeks to get up to it. And you just have to accept that. You have to kill your ego and realize, okay, in order for me to get back into momentum, I do just have to start a little bit less. And that's okay. That doesn't mean I suck or that I'm any weaker or that I'm any less disciplined, because I know if I just focus on the small things and if I just be humble for 2 weeks and I don't ego lift with my habits for 2 weeks and I just slowly progressively overload, then by week 3 I will be where I was. And then when I'm at that place, I just don't stop doing the things that are working. Because if you go hard straight away, you'll overwhelm yourself, you'll injure yourself, it'll feel like too much, and you'll just end up back in a rut. And I'll just wrap up quickly. There's this principle called inertia, where I think it's one of Isaac Newton's laws of motion or laws of physics, where it's basically an object in motion will stay in motion, which means that when you're in momentum, it's much harder for you to go into a rut because you're in momentum. So it's much harder for you to stop a car when a car is moving. And what's also true, what that also means, it's much harder for you to start a car or to push a car when it is stopped. So if you're in a rut, it is going to be much harder for you to gain momentum, which is why at the moment, it's probably really hard for you to get out of bed. But when you're in momentum, it's super easy for you to get out of bed in the morning. And it's why they also say when someone's depressed, for example, it's very hard for them to do absolutely anything, because an object in motion stays in motion, which also means an object that's not in motion also, it's easier for it to stay not in motion. So this is also a reason why you need to start small. Because in order to just do 3 habits, it's going to require you to push so much harder than it was if you were already in momentum. So progressively overload. Progressively overload. Do what you can do now. The small. Just do the small amount you can do now, which is going to require you to push, and be okay with that, because eventually you'll be able to add more and add more and add more, and it'll still feel like you're pushing just as much, but you'll be able to handle and you'll have a bigger capacity to do more. Because right now that you're in a rut, you're not at the capacity or the level that you were when you weren't in a rut, which means you just can't handle as much right now. So do as much as you can handle and then progressively overload until you get back to that point, just like the gym. It's super simple. So to summarize how to climb out of a rut. So first of all, prevent a rut by not stopping doing the things that are working, and by tracking yourself so that when you do stop doing the things that are working, you know what that thing is so that you know not to do that next time. And then when you do go into a rut, just start small. Just keep doing RPE8, which is like rate of perceived exertion, or you can do reps in reserve or whatever. Just do RPE8 forever, because RPE8 when you're at the bottom of your momentum cycle will still feel like RPE8 when you're at the top of the momentum cycle, but when you're at the top of the momentum cycle, you'll just be able to do more. And that's it. That's how simple it is. Don't overcomplicate your ruts. This is exactly how you get out of a rut and also how you prevent a rut. So if you want an action step, if you're currently in a rut or if you're currently getting out of a rut, just think real quickly. Just have a little reflective exercise. Just think, what was I doing when I wasn't in a rut? And what did I also start doing that led me into a rut? And if you're currently trying to, so that's question number 1. And then question number 2, just answer. Okay, what is the small thing I can commit to for the next 2 days to start building some momentum? Then once you've ticked those off, just add something. And then that's it. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, go down into the comments below. There's also some links in the description that you can check out if you want to maybe work more closely with me. I also have some free things. I have a free community with guys who, as I said at the start of this video, I've been helping young men overcome bad habits for the past 3 or so years now. I've recently just opened up a free community, so feel free to check that out. In there's all the guys that I work with, and also the people who watch my content, such as you guys, and also people on Instagram and TikTok. So feel free to go into there. There's a free community. There's also some free other resources down there, and also some things you can pay for if you want to work more closely with me or whatever. So just go down there, have a look in the description, and see what's right for you. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.